without further ado, Catherine, I appreciate you hopping on again. Why don't you kind of refresh us and introduce yourself, tell us who you are and who you serve?
Sure. So I'm Catherine. I'm a psychologist. I largely work with adults who are, I suppose you would say, geeks or nerds. We use a lot of pop culture in our sessions. So we use a lot of cognitive behavioral techniques and acceptance and commitment techniques, but I like to weave in pop culture and pop media through there. So, for example, you might notice from the plushies, I'm quite a nerd, very much a Pokemon
Yeah,
fan. So, actually, this
yeah.
came up in session the other day where I was talking to a client about how some thoughts aren't at the front of our mind, but they're still there anyway, like the Charmander. So, he got to feature in therapy. That was fun.
Nice, nice. I like having stuff like that in my background, as you can see, as like conversation pieces and stuff like that, because I've noticed that when you have that more or less common interest already baked in, it just makes that rapport so much easier. And I think that's something you and I have talked about.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely helps have a starting point to talk about and something in common.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's nice because definitely the physical health, and I'm sure with the mental health, and this is something that you and I can talk about. It's like uncharted territories, and there's definitely a sense of unease and anxiety of reaching out to a professional of the respective field, saying, I don't know what I'm going to get myself into. What is this? And so when they hop on a call and they see, Charmander, and I know The Last Airbender is a big thing for you, and then they see kind of like the D&D and books and stuff that I have, it's like, okay, I can kind of let down my defenses a little bit and kind of connect with this person on a bit of a different level than I would if I were to like walk into an office and it'd all be like white coat syndrome type thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know how you were trained, but the way I was trained was, wear formal clothes, make sure that your background is nice and neutral, put a plant. But it just doesn't feel like me when I do that. And what I like to bring into session, that's one of the things I appreciate you as a coach is you're bringing yourself into it. It's you as a person, not just you the coach, me the psychologist. It's no, we are two people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say 100% in my field, obviously it's more like health and fitness. And so it's not quite to the caliber of like a medical professional or mental health professional. But there was that air that we needed to be wearing workout clothes, but like, plain black, no logos. If it's a logo, it might be like gym or branded logo that you're working for and be very professional. Keep things on like that professional level. Don't use any slang or vulgarity, which I use a lot of. And
But
so that is,
that goes way out the window in my sessions.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you definitely want to be able to relate to them. And I found out that that type of professional bravado, if you will, is disingenuous for me. It's inauthentic. And so I like to be more laissez-faire and relaxed because then that helps get them relaxed. And although it might not appeal to everybody, some people do want that more professional persona, then they can pursue that elsewhere. And as we both serve gamers, we like to have that a little bit more chill, a little bit calmer backdrop, and be as nerdy as possible.
For sure.
Cool, cool. So you and I started working together just over a year ago, I think.
Yeah, just before New Year 2024. Yeah, we're 2025 now.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I got in touch with you just before Christmas and we agreed to start after Christmas, if I
yeah,
recall
yeah.
correctly.
Between Christmas and New Year's, yeah. Because I remember you didn't want to wait for the New Year, New Me. You wanted to get a jump start on it, but you did want to go through Christmas.
Hmm. Yeah, because Christmas, I mean, for everyone, it's a bit of a tricky time with food and eating, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So take me back to that time about a year ago. Where were you then, and kind of like what were your goals when we first started?
Okay, so I've always struggled with being overweight, and in most of my adult life, I've struggled with obesity. I tried online plans, didn't really stick with those very well. I tried going to the doctor, which she gave vague advice, which didn't really help that much, I found. Tried going to a specialist, and she told me that I should be losing a certain amount per week and shamed me when I didn't, which didn't make me feel that great. Tried online programs like Noom, I think it's called, didn't really stick with that. Tried a buddy program, that didn't really work out when some of my buddies started fading out. You name it, I've probably tried it. Tried keto, tried paleo, tried low cal, tried just salad. That one did not work at all.
Yeah,
So yeah, before Christmas last year, I'd had a couple of comments from family members. Like I've kind of had those on and off throughout the years, but in the last year, those were really getting to me, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do something about this. And you're someone who I'd seen a lot on social media, and I thought, okay, this is someone who's not going to tell me, Catherine, you need to eat salads and go for a long hike every day. Maybe this is someone who'll get me and get that I'm more of an introverted person. more of a stay-at-home person. So I thought, okay, this is someone who might get me a bit better and help me to develop a routine that's going to work for me. And it's been a
Yeah.
year and I'm pretty happy. I mean, the fact that I'm still with you after a year, I've never really been able to stick with anything more than a couple of months at most.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we can kind of talk about the journey that you've been on, but you've been insanely consistent despite life's best efforts, we'll kind of say.
Yeah, life happens.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. But before we get to that, I guess we kind of talked about like what your call to action was. What was the like the deciding factor to take that plunge and to work together for us versus reaching out to like somebody else or maybe like an in-person personal trainer?
I think because I'd seen that, like we were talking about earlier, you have this geeky background, you have this gamer background, and I saw a couple of your videos where you were giving very quick pieces of advice that I thought, okay, that's actually something I can implement. Like, I think for me, the one that most got my attention was when you said when you go out to eat, for example, take a Tupperware with you and put half of the food away when you start. And I thought, okay, that's something I can do. It's a very small step, but in the end, that's what it's about. So yeah, I felt that you were someone who could relate to where I was and not try and get me to go and be a very, very active person, for example, which just isn't how I usually am. Or someone who would say, okay, instead of D&D, why didn't you go out walking on Wednesday evenings? Which definitely no.
Right, you got to prioritize game night for sure. And definitely like taking half of your food home when you go out to eat, like you said, it's kind of a small behavior change, but it yields big results because you're cutting your meal in half, so you're cutting your calories in half, and you're saving money because you're cutting the price per meal in half. And so, although it might be seemingly small, it does have a big outcome. And if you do that every time you go out to eat, you can see how that can kind of have a high net yield down the road.
For sure.
Cool, cool. So when we got started, goal was overall weight loss, generally just kind of like rebuilding that momentum. Do you remember kind of what we did to get started? Because you talked about like small daily bite-sized actions and actionable steps through the content, but did that translate to what we programmed?
So from what I remember, the first thing you had me do was track calories, and you said, don't worry about making any changes at this point. Let's just track it and see where we are as a baseline. And I felt, okay, that's something I can do. So it took a while to get into the habit of doing that. But I appreciated that you didn't say, okay, we're going to make all these changes straight away, which are just really tricky to stick to. Whereas this was something I could just get into an easy habit of doing. Saying, okay, this is my breakfast, log it all. This is my lunch, log it all.
Yeah, yeah, and our main goal, like you mentioned, was just to track to get that baseline and not worry about hitting a particular calorie goal or macros, protein, carbs, fats, or anything like that. It was just simply tracking, and that alone was the goal, just to track. And did that feel appropriate? Did that feel overwhelming? I know you said it took a bit to get used to.
A bit to get used to, but as far as the starting point, it felt good to be doing something relatively easy, but also at the same time looking at it and going, oh gosh, I've got a lot to work on here. But what I appreciated was when we had our call to look at that, you didn't shame me for it, which was something that other professionals have done in the past. Where you just said, okay, let's just take it from here, which it helped a lot because I was so worried of thinking, oh damn it, Jordan's going to see this and he's going to think, oh gosh, this person's completely out of control.
No, I don't think I ever thought like that about you or any other client for that matter. But definitely really try to have that open door policy. And the unfortunate truth is that a lot of quote unquote professionals in the field and other fields do try to shame people, like motivation through shaming, which doesn't work. There's a lot of studies to suggest that and support that. And you, as a mental health professional, I'm sure you know that quite a bit. And so, yeah, just really trying to say, look, this is the data that we have. We're observing data. Let's remove that emotion from it. And what analysis can we do with this data? Like, what does this data represent and what changes need to be made down the road? And in the beginning, it was just tracking calories. Okay, where is your kind of baseline for like the first 2 to 4 weeks, probably? And then can we start dropping that down by roughly 500 calories? And I think that was our next step, along with just some body weight movements, right?
Yeah, I think at the time we just started with daily walks of I think half an hour or so, which were not that hard to put into my routine at the time. Like that's a trip to the grocery store and back.
Yeah, like you being in not in America, you have a very pedestrian friendly
Yeah,
city where
it
you can
helps
walk
being in a
places.
European city where in 10 minutes I've got a bunch of supermarkets nearby.
Yeah, yeah, that is very nice. We are lucky enough to have we have one about it's like a 10-minute walk away, but it's a Kroger, so the prices are a little bit higher. So we only go there if we are missing like one or two ingredients for like dinner or something like that.
Yeah, I struggle to understand America as a concept sometimes.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so Obviously, you've been together quite a while. Let's talk about kind of like the journey as a whole. How have things been going for the last, I think it's been 13 months? Obviously, not just sunshine and rainbow. So we've had some struggle buses, we had some hurdles to surpass. I guess talk me through one of the most recent times or a time that kind of sticks out to you on how we navigated those hurdles.
Sure, well, I guess the most recent one would be Christmas, where I have a lot of family and friends across Spain and across the UK. So it was a lot of meeting up for meals, a lot of having people over, going over to people's houses, lots of family judgments and comments there. So I think what helped compared to last year, where it was I was by myself and I was trying to navigate that by myself, it felt better to have you there as a support saying, okay, let's change the aim to not lose weight, but to continue trying to keep up with the habits as best as you can. Because I feel when I've tried weight loss things before, it's been like, for example, when I was on keto, okay, no roast potatoes for Christmas dinner, which as a Brit is a huge shame. So I appreciated that you didn't try to introduce any changes like that, but still kept me tracking as much as possible with the aim that when Christmas was over, we'd just get straight back into it. And I think that helped me to be more mindful as well. Like maybe instead of having 10 roast potatoes, I'd have 5.
Yeah, yeah, and a big thing with that is just simply kind of downshifting a little bit, more going more into like a coaster maintenance phase where we do focus on like tracking calories, but not necessarily hitting a calorie goal. Or maybe we increase the calorie goal to be more of a maintenance, but just allowing yourself that indulgence to have more room to play with as far as calories and still tracking so that way you're not just going completely off the rails. And even if you do overindulge more than what you think you should, you're still tracking it. So that way we have data to kind of fall back on rather than that all or nothing mindset, which is a huge mindset that you and I have been chipping away at and many other people struggle with, where I can't do it perfectly, therefore I'm going to do the complete opposite and just go completely off the rails. And we have been doing a really good job chipping away at that. So anything do you want to talk about that? Because I know that that has been kind of a big major mental barrier for you with that all or nothing mindset.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I guess like for example, when eating meals, if I go over calories on breakfast and lunch, for example, previously I would have thought, oh well, I'm over anyway, so to hell with it all, let's just eat whatever I want for dinner. Whereas now it's more, okay, I've gone over, all right, let's try and keep dinner consistent and then pick up again tomorrow, rather than thinking, well, the whole day shot, the whole week shot. So that's been a huge change of mindset.
For sure, especially when, and I'm not saying this was something that you suffered with, but a lot of people struggle with like on Tuesday, they want to have, you know, like a soda. And so like, oh, I'll just drink a Coke. Well, this whole week shot, I might as well just kind of get all my indulgences out of the way this week and then start fresh on Monday. And then they repeat that cycle for like 20 years. And so,
I've been there.
yeah, yeah. I have to, 100%. And so being able to say I am allocating X number of calories for a soda or this slice of cake or something, or even just saying, hey, look, I'm at my calories. I want this slice of cake. I'm going to eat it. I'm going to be over my calories today, but tomorrow I want to pick things back up like nothing happened. That is something that you and I have been working with to where, although Tuesday might not have been a perfect day, Wednesday is a new day rather than waiting until Monday to start fresh. And I think that has been something that you've been doing very well with, to where you might have like a higher calorie day, like on, well, you said Wednesday's game night, so maybe Wednesday, but you don't use that as an excuse to go off the rails all weekend, which a lot of people would do. You say, okay, Thursday is a new day, and then you have a pretty solid weekend, you know, for the most part. Obviously, we're not chasing perfection, just consistency. You've been very consistent
And
with
that's
that.
been a huge mindset change for me as well.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, just because today I've gone over, it doesn't mean that I've completely failed the whole journey.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just being able to say, although today wasn't perfect, I still accomplished, you know, X, Y, and Z. Maybe it was like 80% great. And tomorrow I'm going to strive to jump right back on the wagon. And that's the same with the daily movement. I know we incorporated some workouts, some body weight workouts, and some stuff at home. We've done all stuff at home, but you have some like light weights, stuff like that that we've been working with. And so incorporating everything at home, and even if like you were supposed to go for a walk and the weather doesn't permit, then you can do stuff at home. So having like those contingencies help as well.
Yeah, that's helped. Like when I injured my foot and you gave me some lying down exercises I could try while I was healing, that helped a lot. So I didn't feel that I had to push myself while I was still trying to recover.
Right. Yeah, that. And also feeling like you can still make progress in other ways while still recovering rather than just saying, okay, I'll just wait until I'm fully healed and then jump back on the wagon, which again, that all or nothing mindset. And instead we say, okay, what can we do to remove like essentially the ankle from the equation, but do like everything else. And so that's why we did like seated stuff. We're doing a lot of like chair stuff right now because of the ankle and focusing on other aspects like leaning into nutrition a little bit more and everything like that.
Yeah, and I think it helps that you're introducing these elements bit by bit rather than when I've tried online stuff in the past where it's tried to put everything at once. So I've kept up with that for maybe 10 days and then gone back into old habits.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about that. You said this is the longest that you've been consistent with things, which is awesome because it's showing that obviously what we're doing is working, but obviously what you're doing is working and you're putting in the work. So what do you think has been a huge driving force or a huge difference maker in staying consistent with us versus all the other programs you've tried in the past?
You? I mean, I think we've got a pretty good rapport going, so that helps a lot. That we don't just talk about nutrition stuff, we also talk about life stuff, which has been great. I think sometimes, like, when I go to get a second snack, I think, no, wait, I have to log this and then I have to tell Jordan about it. Little voice in my head goes, do I really want to do this? So that's been helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
But also knowing that every time I've got a stumbling block, like, for example, I go way over calories, I know that I can talk to you about it and you'll say, okay, how can we go forward from here? Rather than dwelling on, okay, what went wrong? It's more, okay, where do we progress from here? In a way that feels achievable, which has been a huge
Yeah, exactly.
difference.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I appreciate you saying that I made the big difference there. But I do think having somebody to have that accountability saying, okay, A, I'm being more mindful with what I'm eating, and B, if I eat this, I have to log it, and essentially somebody else is going to see that as well. So again, that's kind of keeping things both mindful and keeping you accountable with just that one action, which is great. But another thing is, and I think the underlying message for that was removing the guilt aspect from things. Yes, you're being held accountable, but
Yeah,
also,
but you're not shaming for it. You've never made me feel ashamed for not doing an exercise, for example, or going over calories.
right.
You've always taken it from a place of concern of, okay, what's gone on here? How can we help in future? So that's made a huge difference.
For sure, for sure. And one thing that you and I do a pretty good job with together is obviously communication. You do a very good job communicating, which is like my number one thing when working with somebody. My biggest kryptonite is being ghosted. And so you were very open and honest and communicative more than probably most clients, which is great. I think that's the therapist in you. And
Oh, appreciate it.
yeah, no problem. But one thing that we do, let's say this is kind of a hypothetical because I don't have a specific example, but let's say you had like a really high calorie weekend due to life stress. We'll kind of reassess like, okay, what happened? And then you and I will talk whether we'll hop on like a saving throw call or like a check-in call or just via the text saying what happened over the weekend. What was kind of like the catalyst or the trigger to kind of cause that? And then what steps can we make moving forward to help arm ourselves with the tools to help reduce the risk of that happening or prevent that from happening. And I guess the most recent example I have is the late night snack craving kit that I sent you, where we can kind of have that. I call it a survival kit, to where if you are feeling kind of snacky at night, you kind of have the snacks already planned out rather than seeing what's in the pantry or seeing what's in the fridge. So let's talk a little bit about that. How has that been treating you?
That's been going pretty well. Since you suggested bringing in protein bars, that's been good to curb to late night snacking quite a bit.
Yeah, that and doing the yes and approach where you have a protein bar and a snack. So that way you're getting that protein to help fuel you longer, but you're also kind of curbing that craving. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that kind of brings us up to now to where obviously we've had ups and downs and we have navigated all sorts of life stresses quite well, everything from work to family and doubly so on the family side of things, especially over the holidays.
Yeah, Latin family's great.
Yeah, yeah, I know you said sometimes they don't pull any punches, and so that's like a very Southern American family here. They are very blunt when it comes to communicating with family and just people in general.
Yep. From a place of love. But yeah, not always easy to hear.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I guess over the last 13, 14-ish months, how have you been feeling about your progress, even knowing that it hasn't been like a linear progression, that we've been going through stumbles and setbacks and all that, and everything that life has thrown at us?
I mean, so I have my scales connected to a phone app which tells me how things have been since the beginning of the year. So if I recall correctly, I've lost 15 kilos more or less since we started working together. I don't know what that is in American.
35 pounds ish, closer
Ish,
to 40
sure.
maybe.
So I'm pretty pleased with that. Even though, like you say, there have been ups and downs, but overall, having made that difference and more than that, just being able to stick with it has been for me life changing. I can't imagine having done that before.
Well, I appreciate that. I know you said in the beginning it didn't feel overwhelming, but was there ever a time where you felt like, holy shit, this is just way too much?
I think once or twice, but you've always been really receptive to that, where I've said, Jordan, help. And so we've reevaluated. I can't remember a specific example right now, but I'm sure there must have been one at least once or twice. But you've always been really open to me saying, hey, so I'm not entirely sure this way is working. Can we do something different?
Yeah. And then what did we do with that?
And then we just go, okay, what's the lowest, the smallest thing we can do this? Okay, let's start from there and then build it back up. Well, like for example, before Christmas, I used to do weights 3 times a week, and now we've just reintroduced doing it once a week. So for me, that's been helpful to gradually get back into that, rather than you saying, okay, let's go back to the 3 times a week, because that wouldn't be so sustainable going from zero to all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that all or nothing mindset again, kind of jumping into where a lot of people will do that kind of during the holiday season. They'll maybe take from November and December off, and then January 1st, they're like, okay, I'm going to pick right back up where I was November 1st. And that's not, sustainable or appropriate at that time. So maybe go instead of like what we're doing, instead of 3 days, let's jump to one, see how that feels, build that momentum, make that habitual, then increase to two, and then back up to three, rather than spinning your wheels for 3 months trying to get a 3 day workout split in. Let's downshift and figure out what's appropriate. And that's kind of like the underlying theme of all of this. I tell this to new clients, like tomorrow we can meet and create a perfect program. And then on Saturday, you can tell me, hey, work is just completely, I have to work doubles for the next quarter. So I'm not going to be able to do the workouts that we created. It's like, okay, well, let's downshift rather than you just got to want it enough. We all have the same 24 hours in the day, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, yeah, I want it, but I'm working 80 hours a week. Like I can't work out 3 days a week now. So let's kind of downshift. And so when things do happen, that is what you and I have been doing, and you've been doing a really good job with, again, kind of communicating it. It's, hey, I know we created this program, but life is telling me other things. So let's kind of downshift and focus on like the BAMs, the bare rest minimums that we talked about. And you've been doing a really good job with that. And you're very receptive to that too, because a lot of times, and this is a celebration of you, a lot of times people have that all or nothing mindset to say, no, I can do it. Let's keep the 3 days on. And at that time, and this is something you and I don't think I've ever had to do. It's if you're being stubborn, essentially, and adamant about that, I'll challenge you to say, okay, prove to me within the next 2 weeks that you can do everything at 100%. And if that doesn't happen, I then make you the executive decision to pull back the reins and then make it what I would view as more appropriate. And I'll say more often than not, it does have to fall into me pulling the reins back, but I do like to have that autonomy to say, hey, if you want to do it, you have to show me that you can do it. And and you have been doing a really good job saying like, look, I know this is what we created, but it's not appropriate right now. Can we
Yeah, because sometimes
downshift?
just
And so,
life happens, like I've got trips or family stuff or foot injury, work,
yeah,
stress.
yeah,
Life just
travels. You went
happens.
through a few trips. Yeah, yeah. Oh, speaking of which, I do want to talk about that. You had a really big trip. Was it over the summer?
Yes, I went to Japan.
Yeah, let's talk about that because I know that was something that you were kind of stressing about prior. What were those anxieties, and then how did you feel during the trip?
From what I recall, yeah, I got in touch with you before the trip to say that this was coming up. So I was going to be quite worried about it because we were going to be eating out the whole time because we were staying in a hotel. We wanted to try all kinds of different Japanese food, so I wasn't necessarily going to hold myself back on that. So we came up with a plan of, okay, try to log everything, try to be mindful, but also don't deprive yourself of new experiences because it's not like I'm just going to go back to Japan next year to try everything I missed.
Yeah, that's huge because a lot of times people will try to stick to their quote unquote program and be overly restrictive during times like that. And then when they get home, they feel almost like an animosity towards their program because it prevented them from experiencing everything they wanted to do. And like you said, it's not like you go to Japan every other weekend. And so it's definitely something that you want to fully immerse yourself in, knowing that we're probably going to increase your calories, go to a maintenance. You're going to be eating all sorts of different cuisine you don't even know the name of. And so just track to the best of your
Exactly. Yeah,
ability.
tracking it was a bit difficult. It's like, okay, I don't know what the equivalent this would be in English.
Yeah, yeah, and that's again, that is completely fine, especially in situations like that where those are more or less anomalies and not the norm. Just do the best of your ability. And one thing that we also were worried about, I believe, was just being able to have the endurance to walk all over the place, all over Japan and stuff like that. So how did that feel
Yeah,
when you
because
did you feel like you were able to keep
we
up
were
and
doing
everything?
walking trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly it helped that we kind of built up to that by saying, okay, how much are you going to be walking every day? A couple of hours. Okay, let's try and build up instead of half an hour of walking every day. Let's build it up to 1 hour, and then bit by bit, I was able to go a little bit beyond the hour. So by the time I was on my trip, I was able to keep up no problem.
Nice, nice. So it felt like you had the endurance and stamina to keep up, and not just necessarily just keep up, but
Yeah,
to do everything that you wanted to do.
yeah, to enjoy the trip. Yeah, I mean, I felt exhausted come the end of the day, but by the next morning, I'd be able to go, okay, let's see what today brings.
Yeah, yeah, and I
But
do
I feel
remember
I
you
was
saying
more
that.
knackered than anyone else on the trip.
Yeah, and you were there for what, 3 weeks, so it was a long trip.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember when you came back that you had to do what I call the holiday hangover, where you definitely needed to recover. But I think that was partially
Yeah, I
jet
pretty
lag.
much just slept for a week.
Yeah, yeah. No, I definitely don't blame you there. Um, all right, Catherine. So let's say you're either talking to your past self or somebody who might be along maybe the same journey as you, but a little bit farther behind, and they're at that point where they're ready to reach out to a professional, but they're not 100% sure, or maybe they're watching some of my content and they're like, oh, I don't know if this guy is the right guy. What would you say to them to maybe kind of tip them on the side or reassure them that coaching is a good, viable option?
I would say definitely give it a try. Part of me wishes I had tried it sooner, but also part of me thinks I needed to get to that point to be able to accept that I couldn't do this journey on my own, that I needed somebody to help me with that. And I think it
Yeah,
helped that when I reached out to you, you were so approachable and so warm and empathic in the messaging. And I thought, okay, I can do a first session with this person and we'll take it from there. This isn't someone who's going to scold me for my current weight or make me feel ashamed that I'm not going on regular walks, for example.
right, right. That's funny you say that because I had a consultation with somebody. This was a while ago, and we had a normal consultation, probably very similar to how we had ours. And at the end, they were like, "Wow, I was expecting you to come at me with all sorts of things, and I had done all this research that I have research papers pulled up, and I was gonna argue with you about all this stuff, but you didn't do any of that." I'm like, "No, it's not my job to argue with you on this, that, or the other. It's like try to figure out where you are, where you want to be, and if we can work with each other to make that happen if we're a good fit for each other." And so my job isn't to tell you what your goals are. And I think a lot of coaches, they don't think that way. They think, okay, I'm here to tell you what you need to do, what you need to achieve, and where you should be by the time we're done working with each other. And that very much puts you as a client into the passive spot, like you're just like a yes or no sir type of person, rather than what we do, and you've kind of expressed, you're very active in just like the program itself. Not only are you like active in movement and everything like that, but you say, work's keeping me busy, my ankle hurts, it's not appropriate now, let's adjust it. Can we do X, Y, and Z instead? And so knowing that you have an active hand in the program, I think really helps with just that rapport and buy-in, but also knowing that I'm not going to get scolded because I am
Yeah.
partially creating the program.
Yeah, and knowing that you're really receptive to all the suggestions that I make. You might not think they're all good ideas, and sometimes you call me out on that, but that's a good thing I appreciate as well.
Yeah, yeah, like you
Definitely.
said, not shameful calling out, but just saying, hey, okay, what's the reasoning behind this? Let's give it a try. I'm a huge fan of trying things for a couple of weeks, even if it might not be my initial thought. Going back to D&D, a lot of DMs don't like doing what the players come up with because the DMs didn't come up with it themselves. So if it's not my idea, it's a bad idea type of thing is what a lot of not great quality DMs will have. And so I'll
And
definitely
that's
try
only
the,
something I found with my doctors when I tried going that route.
yeah, yeah. Doctors have so many different things to worry about that it's hard to be able to dive deep in a whole lot of things. And so that's why we focus on exercise and nutrition. You're not going to come to me with a broken arm, but you know what I mean?
No, no, but you're really adaptable when I say, okay, life's really busy right now. I've got this huge work thing, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah,
Like I had a
yeah.
big work project a couple of weeks ago, so I barely went out during that time. So I said, okay, what stuff you can do at home? Okay, you've got an issue where you snack a lot when you're stressed. Okay, how can we work on that? Rather than saying, okay, no snacks at all.
Yeah, and that was when we did the yes and approach where you have a
Hmm.
protein source with your snack because then that helps reduce your overall calories. Cool, cool. Awesome. Any other final remarks or anything else you wanted to say before we hop off?
I would just say if you're doubting, then go for it. Trust this guy. He knows what he's
I
talking
appreciate that.
about.
I appreciate that. Well, Catherine, again, I appreciate you hopping on. It's been a fantastic time, and we still have, I think, a few more months working together. So I'm excited to see what the path lies ahead for us. And so, again, thank you for hopping
Thanks, looking
on.
forward to it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Awesome.